Why would Russia be isolated? Who's going to isolate Russia? I mean, the question is, in order to isolate Russia, Russia has to be seen as being in the wrong by the bulk of the nations. Look, much of the world did not support Russia's military operation in Ukraine. When it first happened, especially China, that saw what was going on in Ukraine and realized that could be the model that would be used in Taiwan against it. So the world rallied behind Russia to sustain Russia economically because they understand that Russia is part of a new world order that's based upon consensus multipolarity decision making. That's what BRICS is all about. The world is rejecting American singularity, the rules-based international order that America imposed on the world in the aftermath of the Second World War. The world's turning its back on that. And so this is why Russia is not isolated, because Russia is part of that world.
Welcome back, everyone. In today's update, we dive deep into the complex geopolitical currents shaping our world, from Russia's confrontation with the West to NATO's endless posturing and the rise of new power centers in the Middle East. Every detail matters. As Inspector Scott Ritter has astutely pointed out, the Western narrative against Russia is a mix of propaganda and strategic failure. His insights remind us that the real story often lies beneath the surface. Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov didn't hold back this week, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. He emphasized that the conflict in Ukraine isn't just a regional dispute, but a Western proxy war designed to weaken and encircle Russia. Lavrov made it clear that Russia sees beyond the facade of humanitarian aid and defense packages sent to Ukraine. These are tools of geopolitical pressure driven by the West's intention to curb Russia's sovereignty and influence. Lavrov pointed out that this hybrid conflict initially relied on sanctions and military aid, but it has evolved into something far more dangerous. The battle lines are no longer just drawn on the ground in Donetsk or Luhansk. They now stretch across diplomatic arenas, military deployments, and economic strategies. As Inspector Scott Ritter observed, the U.S. has consistently abandoned diplomacy in favor of confrontation. Rather than negotiating with Russia as equals, Washington prefers to leverage these crises for political gains. Ritter emphasized that the current strategy is shallow. It seeks to claim small victories, but at a dangerous cost to global stability. Lavrov dismissed Washington's recent offer to negotiate nuclear arms reduction without preconditions as a ploy. According to him, these offers are hollow, nothing more than attempts to gain unilateral advantage while Russia holds firm. And while the US continues to play diplomatic games, Russia stands determined to see this conflict through. Lavrov's message is unmistakable for Russia. Victory is the only acceptable outcome. Now, let's take a closer look at another political figure who played a critical role in derailing peace efforts, Boris Johnson. As Lavrov made clear, diplomacy with the West has been anything but straightforward. In a scathing remark, he singled out Boris Johnson for his role in sabotaging peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine back in May 2022. If you recall, those talks were held in Turkey and presented a genuine opportunity to de-escalate the conflict. But Johnson's sudden intervention threw everything off course. Lavrov's frustration reflects what many have suspected: these negotiations didn't fail by accident. Scott Ritter, in his sharp analysis, pointed out that Johnson's interference was no mere misstep. Instead, it aligned perfectly with the Western agenda to prolong the conflict, ensuring that Ukraine would remain a proxy battleground against Russia. The peace talks in Turkey could have brought an early resolution to the war, saving countless lives and stabilizing the region. But instead, Johnson opted to play politics, knowing full well that prolonging the conflict would serve the West's interests. His actions left Ukraine trapped in an unwinnable situation, fighting a war it was never truly prepared for. Yes, Boris Johnson, always the friend in need, especially when it comes to stirring the pot and walking away. But Johnson's meddling is only one chapter in this story. Up next, we turn to a confrontation between a BBC reporter and the British ambassador to Russia, Andrei Kelin. It was in a recent BBC interview where things got interesting. Andrei Kelin, the British ambassador to Russia, found himself facing an unusually direct line of questioning from a BBC reporter. In typical fashion, the reporter pressed Kelin on whether he was living comfortably in London, disconnected from the economic struggles faced by ordinary Britons. But Kelin didn't flinch. With the calm precision of a seasoned diplomat, he flipped the script. He pointed out that Russia's economy, despite relentless Western sanctions, is thriving. In his words, our economy has outpaced all expectations, growing faster than the G7 and the entire EU combined. This was more than just a diplomatic comeback, it was a declaration. As Inspector Scott Ritter put it, Russia's economic resilience has left the West scrambling. Sanctions intended to cripple Moscow have backfired spectacularly. Instead, Russia has solidified its position, quietly expanding its influence while Western economies falter. Kellen's most biting remark, though, was reserved for the British economy. The UK's economy, he said, now resembles the Titanic sinking fast with no lifeboats in sight. It was a brutal but fitting analogy given the state of affairs in the UK. And if you think that was a harsh critique, wait until we explore Germany's escalating fears about war and the outspoken warnings from Sarah Wagenknecht. In Germany, a sense of unease is spreading like wildfire. Prominent politician Sarah Wagenknecht recently shared alarming statistics back in 2019. Only 46% of Germans expressed concern about the prospect of war. But now in 2024, that figure has surged to a staggering 81%. This sharp rise reflects deep public anxiety over the government's increasingly aggressive foreign policy. Wagenknecht warned that the political elite are steering Germany down a reckless path. With NATO drills on the rise and Berlin's unwavering support for sanctions against Russia, the public is growing restless. The fear is no longer hypothetical, it's palpable. Meanwhile, the EU's rotating presidency is about to pass from Hungary to Poland, and that shift will bring even harsher sanctions on Russia. Poland's hardline stance means that any hope for de-escalation will be short-lived, if not completely dashed. As Scott Ritter has warned, Europe's leaders seem oblivious to the risks of their actions. They continue to antagonize Russia while ignoring the growing discontent within their own borders. NATO's military drills, once rare and symbolic, have become routine, further fueling tensions. But while Germany wrestles with its fears, NATO keeps pushing forward with new exercises, preparing for a confrontation that seems more likely by the day. NATO's military drills are becoming so frequent that they seem to be running out of clever names to distinguish one from the next. These exercises scattered across Eastern Europe are meant to demonstrate strength, or at least that's the story Western officials tell. However, with every new drill, tensions in the region only continue to rise, raising the question of whether these drills are doing more harm than good. Meanwhile, a new twist emerged in the ongoing geopolitical theater. Rumors suggest that a North Korean artillery commander was spotted operating on Ukrainian front lines. This claim has alarmed South Korea, but Moscow has dismissed the rumors, calling it nothing more than friendly cooperation between North Korea and Russia. Because, of course, North Korea's involvement is purely diplomatic, right? Just a friendly gesture. Nothing to see here, folks. But NATO's activities in North Korea's alleged involvement are only one part of the puzzle. Now, let's shift our focus to Russia's growing influence in Asia. In a remarkable diplomatic achievement, Russia has brokered a resolution between China and India over their long-standing border disputes. This breakthrough came just in time for the BRICS summit, highlighting President Putin's growing diplomatic influence on the world stage. At the same time, NATO found itself caught off guard by a pointed question from an astute journalist. Why does NATO label China a threat, given that China operates only one overseas military base in contrast to the US, which boasts over 750 bases spread across 80 countries? As the room fell silent, it became one of those rare moments when silence spoke louder than words. The imbalance between NATO's rhetoric and the reality of global military presence was exposed in real time. While NATO fumbles with these contradictions, Moscow continues to solidify its place on the global stage, economically and diplomatically. And for that, we need to look no further than the booming city of Moscow. Let's talk numbers. Moscow ranks among the top 3 most prosperous cities in the world. And if you think that's an exaggeration, consider this the city's high cost of living rivals that of New York and Tokyo. Russia doesn't print dollars, but its purchasing power parity reflects a high standard of living. Of course, there's still a disparity between urban and rural regions, a reality shaped by Russia's vast geography and extreme weather. Yet Russia's overall economic performance is undeniable. In terms of purchasing power parity, it stands as the largest economy in Europe and 4th largest in the world. Finally, let's take a quick look at the chaos unfolding in Sudan. In Sudan, government forces have taken new strongholds while a rogue faction accidentally shot down a UAE plane. The UAE's involvement in the conflict previously denied has now been exposed. With oil money drying up, Gulf countries are scaling back their interventions. But Turkey is filling the void, expanding its influence from Libya to Somalia. As the world shifts towards multipolarity, Inspector Scott Ritter's predictions about the end of Western dominance seem increasingly accurate. And that wraps up today's update. From proxy wars to diplomatic breakthroughs, Russia stands firm against the West's maneuvers. As Inspector Scott Ritter noted, victory is not just an option, it's the only outcome. Stay tuned for more updates as the global order continues to shift.